I followed my wife for an entire week after suspecting she was having an affair and found her at a motel with her affair partner. I'm 39M, and I'm writing this. I read 1,000 stories like mine on this site, but I always thought those people were in a different universe. Now I'm one of them. My name is Liam. My wife, the woman who completely obliterated my reality, is Jocelyn. We were married 13 years, and prior to that, we were together an additional 4. We have twin boys, Aiden and Miles. They are 11. They're my world. I work as an accountant, which is about as boring and stable as it sounds. Jocelyn was a real estate agent. She's high energy, always moving, and had always been very good at her job. About 2 months ago, I started noticing the flickers. Nothing major at first, just small shifts in her orbit. Jocelyn has always been a looker, but suddenly the effort multiplied. New clothes that still had tags. Makeup wasn't just on, it was applied. Gone was the same comfortable black cardigan she wore daily. Suddenly, she was dressing like she was perpetually headed to some kind of high-stakes meeting. The smell of her perfume, a heavy floral scent she rarely wore, started clinging to the bathroom after her morning shower. It was those little tech habits that really got me. We used to watch a show together, sharing the couch, and she'd have her phone face up on the end table. Now it was face down. If a notification came in, she'd snatch it, read with a quick, private smile, and then slide it in her jeans pocket. She started taking calls in the garage or outside on the deck, speaking in that low, almost administrative tone. But the calls always ended with a sigh that sounded too contented for a tough client. Negotiation. When I brought this up one evening, she was defensive like a cornered animal. I was preparing a sandwich for the boys' lunches, and she was already in her work clothes for the next day, checking her reflection in the microwave. Hey, I started, my tone even, you've been putting in crazy hours at work lately. You okay? You just seem different. Jocelyn whipped around, and her face froze. Different how? Because I'm finally putting in the hours it takes to be successful. You want me to stop trying to bring in money for this family? Her voice rose slightly, carrying a sharp, manufactured offense. I dropped the butter knife, clattering onto the counter. Whoa, that's not what I said. I'm worried about you. I miss you. It feels like we're roommates who occasionally high-five in the hallway. She stared at me a long moment, the anger dissipating into a kind of weary resignation. She walked over and rested her head on my shoulder, but it felt stiff like a performance. I know, Liam, I know the market is just insane. I'm exhausted. I'll try to be home early tomorrow, okay? She pecked me, one of those fast, dry presses of the lips, and went upstairs. The next day, she didn't come home early. Neither did she the day after. She was gone until nearly 8 p.m. most evenings. That's when it set in my stomach. I needed to know. I couldn't continue to go on with this sickening uncertainty. I took the following week off, informing my boss I needed to burn vacation days on a massive, unexpected family issue. I told Jocelyn I had a huge, confidential project for a difficult client and would be working from the home office all week. She didn't look concerned. She looked relieved. That moment was a punch of the gut, but it fueled my resolve. By Monday morning, she was out the door at 8:45 a.m., claiming that she had 2 early showings. I waited until her engine was a distant hum, then grabbed my jacket and a baseball cap and slipped out. I didn't drive to her office. Instead, I drove to the local park and ride lot, parking my aging sedan in the furthest corner where it blended in with all the other commuter cars. I only had to wait 20 minutes before her black SUV pulled in. Jocelyn didn't immediately get out. She was still working her phone, smiling. A minute later, another car, dark gray Audi S5, pulled up 2 spaces down. A man got out, tall, fit, maybe mid-30s, wearing a nice set of business casuals, hair meticulously styled. He walked over to Jocelyn's SUV. She unlocked the passenger door. He slid in. They didn't drive away. They just sat there. I watched them through the tinted windows, my binoculars pressed tight against my face. I watched them laugh. I watched the man reach out and gently brush a stray piece of hair from her cheek. I watched her lean in and whisper something that made him throw his head back, howling with silent laughter. This wasn't a real estate meeting. This was a scene from a romance movie, and I was the miserable extra parked 100 yards away. An hour later, he returned his Audi. They drove off in opposite directions. I decided to follow the Audi. I had to have a name. The Audi took me to a high-rise office building downtown. I snapped a dozen photos of the car, concentrating on the plate, then headed home, my hands shaking so violently I had to steady the wheel at times with my knees. That evening, Jocelyn came home late. Long day, she let out, falling onto the couch. I was washing dishes. She didn't even notice the tension radiating off me. The market is just bonkers, Liam. I didn't say a word. I just kept scrubbing. My stomach was a knot of ice. Update, 4 days later. The next 4 days were a slow, agonizing descent into hell. I was on mission, fueled by a terrifying cold certainty. Tuesday, Same routine. Jocelyn met the man in the park and ride lot again. This time, they drove off together in her SUV. I stayed back, letting a couple of cars get between us. They drove clear across town, away from any commercial districts, and pulled into the parking lot of the Copper Kettle, a tiny, dimly lit cafe known for its cozy, isolated booths. They went inside. I parked nearby and walked over, pretending to tie my shoe outside. I caught a glimpse through the window. They were sitting opposite each other, but his hands are on the table, and her fingers were interlaced with his, resting casually between the sugar caddy and the napkin dispenser. They didn't look stressed. They didn't look like colleagues. They looked intimate. I felt a wave of nausea, so strong I had to duck into an alley, just a dry heave. I stayed and watched for over 90 minutes. They emerged laughing, their energy unmistakable, the body language shouting everything Jocelyn would not admit to me. Wednesday, this day, was different, and it was the day I got my solid proof. Before I left, I ran the license plate photos for Monday. The car was registered to Gregory Vance, age 36, listed occupation, investment strategist. I got a sinking feeling, investment strategist, real estate agent, perfect synergy. Jocelyn got up early, but didn't head to the park and ride. She drove directly onto the highway heading north. I did the same, leaving 3 cars plus a large box truck between us. She drove for almost 30 minutes until she reached a dingy, 2-story structure on the service road of the highway, a thing called the Elmwood Inn, the kind of dive, low-budget motel that features exterior doors with plastic chairs out in front, the type of establishment that has anonymity down to an art. I watched her pull into the rear part of the lot. Gregory's Audi was already there. Jocelyn stepped out of her SUV. She checked her phone quickly, smoothed down her hair, and then walked directly to room 109. Gregory opened the door and pulled her inside. I didn't see a kiss. I didn't see a hug. I saw a familiarity that was more damning than anything else. I sat in my car, parked behind a large, forgotten landscaping van. I had the windows cracked, the engine off, the air suffocating. Time didn't move. I kept looking at my watch. Then up at the faded brown door of room 109. An hour passed. Then a second. Every breath was agony. I wasn't just losing my wife. I was losing the foundation of my entire adult life. After 2 hours and 12 minutes, the door opened. Jocelyn exited first, straightening the collar of her blouse. Gregory came out second. He didn't touch her, yet they walked shoulder to shoulder down to her car. Gregory bent low over her open window, and Jocelyn smiled, a real, unencumbered smile I hadn't seen aimed at me in months. They parted ways. I took pictures, dozens of them, not just of the cars, but of them separately walking away from the room. The timestamp on my camera was irrefutable. I drove home in a blinding, quiet rage, deleting the photos only after I had backed them up onto a secure thumb drive. I needed proof, not a public meltdown. Thursday and Friday repeated the pattern. A short, business-like discussion with me regarding her workload, then off to the Elmwood Inn, always room 109, it would seem, and then 2 hours of betrayal before finally returning home, ready now to resume mom and wife duties, her perfume now subtly replaced by that sterile smell of motel soap. By Friday evening, I felt like a ghost haunting my house. I knew everything. I had the proof, but the sheer weight of what I'd found kept the words lodged in my throat, and I couldn't articulate the destruction. I just sat on the patio, watching Aiden and Miles play catch, and wondered how I was supposed to tell them their mother had broken our family. Update 3 weeks later. The weekend after I confirmed everything was surreal, we had a small dinner party with my brother Marcus and his wife. Jocelyn was bright, charming, and attentive, laughing easily, touching my arm in moments of shared conversation. I watched her detachedly, as though I were watching a masterful actress playing a role. She even told Marcus about a difficult client meeting she'd supposedly had on Wednesday. I just nodded, sipping my drink, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. I knew that if I confronted her in such a way, I'd be sure to explode. I needed control. I spent the next 2 weeks researching divorce attorneys. I didn't say a word to Jocelyn about it. I cleaned my browser history every 10 minutes. I sat down with an aggressive, highly recommended lawyer, Mess Keller, who specialized in high-asset infidelity cases. When I showed her the photos, the license plate info, and the timeline, she just leaned back, a grim look on her face. "Mr. Vance," she said, "you have a very strong case for fault. We will seek primary physical custody of the children and make use of this fact considerably in the asset division." That validation, cold and legal, was the only thing keeping me from breaking down. I finally confronted her on a Tuesday. The boys had a late soccer practice, and I'd purposely blocked out the evening. I pulled the thumb drive out of my sock drawer and plugged it into the kitchen laptop. Jocelyn walked into the kitchen. She was wearing one of her showing blazers and froze when she saw the computer screen. I had a photo up, her standing outside room 109, Gregory's hand on the small of her back. Just before they went inside, I didn't yell. I didn't need to. My voice was a flat deadline. "Who is Gregory Vance, Jocelyn?" She seemed to just deflate right there on the spot. The color drained from her cheeks until she was a sickly white. She tried to say something, but only a dry click emerged from her throat. I spun the screen around. I didn't want to know. I hoped I was wrong, but I knew I couldn't trust you, so I took a week off work, and I followed you every day, the Park and Ride, the Copper Kettle, and the Elmwood Inn, room 109, 6 times in that 1 week. She dropped onto a chair, her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking violently. Liam, please stop. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The words were muffled, pathetic. Sorry isn't a currency, Jocelyn, I said, heading to the coffee maker and pouring a cup despite the 6 p.m. hour. It's a noise you make when you've been caught. I want the whole truth. How long? She struggled to pull herself together, dragging a hand across her tear-streaked face. It started about 7 months ago. He was a financial advisor who cold called me about a client investment property. We started talking, then getting coffee, then it escalated. Did you love him? I asked straightforwardly, holding the mug of coffee tight enough to crack it. She would not look up, keeping her gaze firmly fixed on the floor tiles. No, I don't know. It was an escape. You and I haven't been happy for a long time. It was a terrible mistake, but I chose you, Liam. I always chose you. I scoffed, a single sharp sound. You chose me when you were walking into a motel room, when you were lying about client meetings, when you were erasing your texts. You chose me when it was convenient. I've already spoken to a lawyer. MS. Keller. I filed the paperwork. I want a divorce. This news snapped her out of her weeping. Her head shot up. No, Liam, please. We can fix this for the boys. I'll quit my job. I'll get counseling. I'll never see him again. Please, look at me. I'm begging you. Don't do this to our family. I stared at her. Her desperation was real, but it was too little, too late. You did this to our family, Jocelyn, not me. You shattered the trust beyond repair. I watched you be happy with him. I can never look at you the same way again. You have 24 hours to pack a bag with necessities. You need to be out of the house before the boys get back from school tomorrow. I left her sobbing, alone at the kitchen table, and walked out of the kitchen and up to my office. The house felt huge, silent, and poisoned. I didn't see her again that evening. By the time I picked up Aiden and Miles, she was upstairs, the door to our bedroom locked. Update, 5 months later. 5 months. It feels like a decade. Jocelyn left the next day. As instructed, she packed a suitcase and a duffel, looking broken and defeated, leaving the boys a note stating she was on an extended work trip to handle a difficult sale. A lie, of course, but the least painful one for now. She went to stay with her older brother, Felix, who lives about an hour away. The chaos was massive at first, feeling the tectonic shift in the house. Aiden and Miles became volatile. 1 minute they were clinging to whichever parent was present. The next they were screaming over spilled milk. They started fighting each other constantly. A month into the separation, I received a call from their principal. Miles had pushed another student down the stairs during gym class. Thankfully, he hadn't been hurt. But the principal insisted they start seeing someone. I agreed in a heartbeat. Currently, I handle my accounting work, along with 2 emotionally wrecked 11-year-olds, and manage the aggressive legal strategy crafted by MS. Keller. She was relentless. A silver bullet was the evidence I had managed to compile. We filed for divorce on grounds of adultery. And immediately, Jocelyn's legal team, seeing the weight of the evidence, folded on the custody issue. They knew she had no ground to fight. I received primary physical custody of both boys. Jocelyn gets them every other weekend and 1 evening dinner during the week. The house stays with me. The settlement was heavily weighted in my favor, though I didn't feel victorious receiving half of her 401k. It was just money to pay the cost of the destruction she caused. The boys are now in a regular weekly session with a child psychologist. Shun, I didn't give her the full ugly details, just that the separation was due to irreconcilable differences. Shun told me they were dealing with grief and abandonment trauma. They ask about her constantly. When is mom coming home from the work trip? Why can't she just work from here? The lies are becoming harder to maintain. She broke the rule about attorneys only about a month ago. She appeared unannounced at the house at 7 a.m. Just as I was making breakfast, I opened the door, and she pushed past me, walking into the kitchen. I need to talk to you, Liam. Not as lawyers, as us. She had red-rimmed eyes and looked thin. I blocked the entrance to the living room. There is no us, Jocelyn, and you are in violation of temporary orders. All communication goes through MS. Keller. She grasped the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. I broke things off with Gregory. The second you said you were filing, he wasn't who I thought he was either. He didn't want the drama of a family breaking up. It was just a stupid escape for both of us. It's over. I'm alone. I moved out of Felix's and into a tiny rental downtown. I stood my ground. I don't care who you're with. Your relationship with him is irrelevant to my life now. The marriage is over. What you did show me who you are, the ease with which you lied, the casual nature of the betrayal. I watched you, Jocelyn. I watched you walk into that room 6 times. That is my reality now, not whatever regret you're selling. She began to cry again, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. But for Aiden and Miles, we can co-parent better if we try. I miss them so much. I miss us. I pointed toward the front door. Get out of my house. Jocelyn, I'll call the police if you don't leave right now. You have your visitation schedule. Follow it. She didn't fight me anymore. She snatched up her purse. Her face a mask of agony and dawning realization that I was absolutely, coldly serious. She whispered that she would send me the new address for her lawyer. Then she was gone. Then came the biggest bombshell of all. 2 weeks later, Keller called me. Mr. Vance, I just spoke with Mrs. Vance's attorney. They've decided to waive their right to appeal the asset division. She's agreed to your terms and wants to finalize the divorce immediately. She is not requesting spousal support, only her allocated portion of the community property. It was a complete surrender. I was stunned. Jocelyn was a fighter. She always had been. Her capitulation only made the situation feel more final, more desolate. It felt less like a legal victory and more like watching a ship sink. The divorce moved fast after that. Final update, 1 year later. Divorce was granted 4 months ago. The name in my accounts is just Vance now. My marital status reads single. The house reads mine. All paper resolutions are complete, but the emotional scars are still deep and throbbing. My boys, Aiden and Miles, are doing much better at our. Shin was a lifeline. I finally sat them down, not long after the divorce was finalized, and told them the truth or a modified version of it. I told them that sometimes when two adults are very unhappy, they start to look for things outside the marriage that they think will make them feel better. I told them that Mom did that. And it hurt me very deeply, and that once that hurt happens, the marriage can't continue. I emphasized that it had nothing to do with them, and everything to do with her choices. Miles, always so sensitive, burst into tears and asked, "Was it the man you saw her with?" My heart stopped. I stared at him, my breath catching. I realized now just how much I talked on the phone with Keller while they were around. I said, "Yes, it was." He fell silent. Aiden, the more pragmatic twin, simply looked out the window and asked, "Is he still around?" I reassured him no, the man was gone. It was a painful conversation, yet it needed to be had. Their grades went back up, their fighting subsided. They learned, as well as any 11-year-olds could, that the change was permanent, and that the fighting and sadness were a product of their mother's actions, not their existence. But the most unexpected development came from Gregory Vance. About 6 months after Jocelyn moved out, he was involved in an enormous fraud case at his investment firm. He wasn't the principal offender, but was heavily implicated in the cover-up and lost his job, his license, and his entire professional reputation. He also disappeared completely from the area, according to my private investigator contacts, which I kept on retainer just in case. This was one of those twists I could never have predicted. It turned out that the man responsible for basically destroying my family had his own life implode completely, publicly, a weird sort of karmic justice. It brought me no emotional relief whatsoever. Jocelyn is a shell of the woman that I married. She attempted to restart her real estate career, but the emotional toll, combined with her limited time due to the visitation schedule, has slowed her down considerably. She works now on a part-time basis for a property management company. She doesn't have the fire anymore. She cornered me at a school function 2 months ago. The boys were collecting their science projects, and she came up to me in one of the quiet corners of the auditorium. "Liam," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the din of the crowd. "There's something I want you to know. I'm sorry for everything. 13 years of a good life thrown away for nothing. I miss my home. I miss having my son sleeping under the same roof as me every night." I looked at her, and for the first time in a year, I felt nothing but cold, hard detachment. The feelings of anger and betrayal had calcified into a wall. "That's good, Jocelyn." I replied completely without emotion. "You should regret it because I watched you. I know you chose a 2-hour block in a motel room over us. Repeatedly, you made a choice, and the consequence of that choice is this new, permanent reality." She extended a hand but pulled back without touching me. Is there absolutely no way back, ever, even if we just co-parented while living in the same house for the boys? I shook my head firmly, definite in a way I hadn't been since the day I filed. "No, the marriage is over. Our time together is over. You need to be the best parent you can during your time, and I'll do the same. That's the only relationship we have left, and it's strictly logistical." I turned my back on her, collected the boys, and walked out, leaving her standing alone in the auditorium. It was an ending, concrete and unambiguous. The man I was is gone. The man who replaced him is a little colder, a little harder, but he is a devoted father who secured his children's future. The marriage is incinerated. The affair partner is ruined. And Jocelyn is forced to face the full, unmitigated consequences of her calculated betrayal. The long, agonizing fight is finished, the boys and I are rebuilding, and that is the only win that matters.